Where did it go wrong?
When I started selling drugs.
Frank Stedman.
Drug trafficker from Essex.
Caught up in a £80 million cocaine bust.
There was no risk doing that, though. Working legitimately on a scaffolding site.
There wasn't no risk. It was my insecurities of having no money. I got a phone call from someone in the hire truck world to say, do you want to come and do bigger drops for loads more money? I just said, yeah.
You had an instinct that something was wrong, but you didn't think it was going to be wrong where you get nicked.
I pulled up at my kid's mum's house. Police have shut the road off. Helicopters hovered above her house, and I thought, oh my God, this is happening in front of my kids. I've ruined my kids' lives. I got the phone call saying the job's gone over, and I was like, what? And they said, the job's gone over, and I was like, I knew it. I said, what do I do now? They said, leave the country. I said, where do I go? So I sneaked over to Ireland and then booked my flight, last opportunity, got on the plane and flew to Thailand.
Welcome to the Second Chance podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Rowe. On this podcast, we talk to people from diverse backgrounds who share their stories of redemption, resilience, and second chance. Go to our YouTube channel so you can watch those interviews, subscribe, share, and click on the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. Frank, thanks for coming in to meet me. It's a pleasure. And we were just talking about how we connected in the first place with the tried and tested social media.
It's a good and bad thing, isn't it?
I'm always having conversations about whether it is positive or negative. I'm an advocate, you know. You can reach people all around the world.
Well,
you can connect.
FaceTiming someone in halfway across the world, it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, my sister, I was talking to her yesterday, and she sort of said, I'm fed up of walking down the road and the cameras are on me. And I'm sort of saying, you've got to reframe it and think that those cameras are protecting you, because if some guy's walking behind you with a menacing,
and if you're not doing anything wrong, who cares who's watching?
Who cares? I'm the same.
Yeah.
But look, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
The reason I asked you to come in here is because I heard a little bit about your story listening to another podcast, actually. And I know you reached out because you've watched my Netflix show.
Yeah.
But what really interested me was your narrative about your own story. When you read a headline that says £80 million cocaine, or, you know, cartels, this guy got 28 years, this guy got 9 years, this guy was on the run. You know, so you were described as being part of a kind of
criminal organised gang.
Gang. And then I listened to you talk on a podcast. And it just felt like you were so far removed from that.
Yeah, I probably was when I was doing it. It's funny, I had to and from a podcast guy that I'd done in the beginning. He wanted to put gangster in the thing, and I kept saying, I'm not. And he said, no, Frank, it's clickbait. And I didn't understand it then. I understand it now, but I was like, that, you know, that's not, like you said, my narrative. My narrative is
and that's important because you've been described as somebody who's involved in a massive cocaine importation gang, and that were linked to cartel.
Which I was, I suppose.
But how would you describe yourself?
My actual self, you know, I'm an easygoing, happy-go-lucky bloke, and I was more so as a kid. Prison probably changed that a little bit, but carefree, but you know, hardworking. I've always worked in scaffolding from when my children were born. But then, you know, you can't say you're an honourable person because I ended up going to prison, and you know, my family, leaving my kids. So, you know, going back to who I was then, but what's happened then's made me who I am now. It's all, you know, I think it's a bigger picture than who I am today sitting here. I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't go through all the rubbish and everything I'd done. But even when I was committing crimes, I used to think to myself, this isn't really me.
Where did it all start then? Where are you from originally?
I'm from a little town in Epping, and we didn't have no money. And it wasn't, you know, we wasn't poor. You know, we always presentable. You know, it doesn't cost nothing to be clean.
When you say we, who are we talking about?
Me and my brothers and sisters. I'm one of 6. My mum brought us up from, I think I was 7 when my parents split up. My dad used to come over, but he was very old fashioned. He'd come over to the social club down the road, and we'd go and see him down the social club, you know, and then when you get into teenagers, I've got it now, my daughter doesn't live with me, my son does. When you get to teenagers, you don't want to go and stay at your dad's house. So we didn't really want to go and stay over there. But yeah, I was playing football. I started playing men's football probably at the age of 13, 14, because I was good. I was small, but I was good. And started looking up to the wrong people. Probably glamorised, probably started even earlier watching films, maybe. I remember the Craze film. I remember that had a bit of an impact with me when I was younger. the Kemp brothers.
Yeah.
Remember watching that and thinking, oh, blimey, look at like the respect they get and things like that. And I was from a small town, Epping, very small school, 1,000 people, I think, that was in it, maybe a bit more. But I'm one of 6 and we have 4 brothers. So every time we went to the school, like my older brother would mess around at school and then we'd come in, oh, it's another Stedman, it's another Stedman. So you'd not get time with a brush because I was really, really bad at school. I wasn't horrible. I was found out later in life I was dyslexic. I didn't do the schoolwork. It was one of them, you're talking to someone behind you and the teacher would say, turn around. I'd get up and turn all the way around and carry on talking. Just a class clown. But being a class clown and making everyone laugh, you walk away from school with nothing. And I wasn't, my son messed around a little bit, but he bucked his ideas up. He passed his tests. Where he's smart, he passed and got, but I messed around and where I wasn't smart in the way of academically.
This is not a criticism of your mum, but do you think without your dad being around or a father figure being around, maybe there was a stepfather or
we were feral. Not feral, but I mean, us boys, he was around. My mum was a very strong woman, but she's bringing up 6 children. She's holding down 3 jobs.
And where were you in that 6 in terms of age? Right.
Yeah, so I'm the making, trying to make everyone laugh sort of thing. So I've got an older sister, I was the eldest, and then 2 older brothers, and then a younger brother and a younger sister,
Right.
sort of bang in the middle. But me and one of my brothers are 19 months apart. The other ones were very close in age, in the middle. But yeah, my mum was, I can't criticise the way she brought us up, but when we left that front door, we were doing what we wanted when we wanted. And I had, my job now, I had no fear as a child. I would do, there's a little story, my mum says she was talking to the neighbour and she's gone pure white and she said, don't turn around now, Gloria. Frank's up, and I climbed up on the roof and I was standing on the chimney. Mum, look at me, look at me. And she's gone, just calmly turned around and said, Frank, get down. There was a scaffold up the back. I didn't just climb up the drain pipe. So I just think I had that, I wrote it down a while ago, like a confused ambition. Didn't know what I wanted. And then I started playing men's football, going back to what you said. And then I started in the pub culture at 14, 15 years old. Watching the blokes, holding the doors, hold the door for a geezer who's doing something or someone's coming, not knowing. And then you hold the door while someone's beating somebody up. And before you know it, you go out to the local nightclubs, it's a small town, and they're like, oh, he's all right, him. Because I played football with them for years. And then it's, oh, can you go and give him that? And it snowballs. But I knew what I was doing. I didn't sit here saying I was, like these county lines, I was groomed. Maybe I wasn't intentionally groomed. Like I wasn't, somebody's not said, oh, let's get him selling drugs or let's do this.
That's what you're talking about. You're talking about at a young age you were caught up in criminality.
Yeah. And I probably looked up to criminality, people with, I didn't know it was criminal records, but like they're wearing all the nice clothes, they've got all the money, playing football on a Sunday. They're taking a mickey out the builders, going to work on the Monday, and they're not. And I used to think to myself, well, where you've got no money, you think, I'll just follow that money. And then I sort of dabbled in it a little bit.
How old were you at this point?
Probably 16, 17, 18, dabbled in it a little bit. And then
And when you say dabbled in it, what are we talking about?
passing things around nightclubs, going to a pub, from a pub to a pub, just amongst older friends. I always got on with older people. And then I stopped. I met somebody, my children's mum, completely stopped. Started scaffolding, need a proper job, started scaffolding, and I was getting paid labourer's money, but I had a mortgage and I stuck at it for a good couple of years. But I still remember I was in Tesco's buying Blue Stripe food, a whole trolley full of Blue Stripe food, and I was brought up like that. And it wasn't embarrassment. I was embarrassed about my upbringing, but I was embarrassed about, you've got the Blue Stripe food and are you.
And for those who don't know what Blue Stripe food is,
they don't. So it was the cheapest food in Tesco's, but it had white and blue stripes in it, so everybody knew. Now it's maybe jazzed up a little bit, and the packaging's not so bad. But if you've got a trolley full of Blue Stripe food, and I don't know whether maybe subliminally, maybe I've looked at it and just thought I've gone nowhere. I don't want my son to be brought up like me. I've actually gone nowhere. I'm buying Blue Stripe food, the food that I was brought up on, and I had a trolley full, And it was just after payday, got paid. And I still remember, and I said to my children's mum, I'm not doing this no more. And I made one phone call and I was back in.
Back into what?
Selling drugs.
What was your first act of criminality then, selling drugs?
Apart from passing, probably for myself, I put the word out that I'm going to get some, like, cocaine, that is. And a couple of people said, I'll get it off you, just friends. And then I don't drink and smoke, still don't. I have the odd glass of wine on my birthday the other week, but I don't drink or smoke, and I never have been. I've always thought I was going to be a professional footballer. That's what I thought up until I remember sitting at school and the headmistress said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a footballer. And she laughed and said, let's be more realistic. And I was like, you've never seen me play football. But knowing you need a parent behind you taking you all around the country, I didn't have that. So it's not my parents' fault, and I probably wasn't good enough either. I had trials, never made it. But I just followed the, and then for myself, just put the feelers out of, I'm going to start selling little bits of drugs, and never told anyone what for. I just was fed up with having no money. Every month I was getting paid, my money was coming out, and my children's mum was working for, like, in beauty, I think, at the time, and she was making her money, and we was young. I had my son.
But there was no
20.
risk. There was no risk doing that, though. Working legitimately on a scaffolding site, getting a wage at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Your other half working. It was all legit, and there was no risk to you, your missus, or then your son, who must have been really young.
There wasn't no risk. It was my insecurities of having no money, and I think I jeopardised everything for money. I nearly swore then, but for money, which is nothing. Money's. And
what was it? What I find interesting. What was it that you thought money could bring you that you didn't already have?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I used to, be pushing people at the train to get through the barrier because I couldn't afford to get on the train. Just little things, and walking from Waltham Abbey to Epping, which is a good hour and a half walk to get to work. And I was doing scaffolding. If I was working in an office, it might have been less taxing on my body, but I was doing scaffolding, just started this job, and I'm knackered, and it went on, and I was 2 years in, and as a labourer scaffolding back then 20 years ago, I was getting £60 a day. I was getting £100 a week sub, and at the end of the month it was coming out my wages, and I think I was taking home £1,300 at the end of the month. My mortgage was 12. And I was, I wasn't borrowing money because I really didn't have anyone around us to borrow money off of, and I sort of just run the gauntlet for a while, for a year or two scaffolding. But like you said, there was no risk. If I stayed at it, I always joke around. If I stayed at it, I'm not with their mum anymore. So, but I left the house to her. We got a mortgage together, which was fine, So I couldn't see the wood beyond the trees, and maybe that's no guidance, like you were saying. And I split up with her, give her the house. But I always joke around saying, if I didn't go to prison and I worked in Tesco's, I looked about a year ago, me and my partner now, we looked a year ago, a house just down the corner to where I bought a house, bought it for £127,000. Like, my kid's mum, she had a flat, she put a deposit down, we got the mortgage. They're worth like 400 grand there. And I'd have no mortgage.
But this is what I think is interesting, because even though that was 20 years ago?
Yeah.
20 years ago, you were still in a position that is far better than most people.
Oh, I had a house.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a car because I didn't have a license, but my partner had a car at the time, and we was just struggling. And I'll be the first to admit it, I probably wasn't mentally strong enough to keep struggling, and I copped out. People think
into drug dealing.
Yeah, drug dealing, yeah.
What did drug dealing mean for you? Because there's different types of drug dealing,
money.
Isn't there?
Yeah.
So it's about earning money. But was you a street drug dealer?
Yeah.
Stand on the street corner handing out little packets,
I was of the era of where your phone rings. Had a little, like, dodgy phone, and then it just rings and someone gets your number. And when you're from, I don't know your town, but where you're from, a small town, you know everyone. Everyone knows you. And I'm one of 4 brothers. And one of my eldest brother, he was in the pubs a lot, like drinking. Everyone knew him. He was brilliant at football, great at darts, great at pool. He was just a real, like, pub guy, but big character. And I think we just followed in them footsteps of being like the lads about town. And I wasn't into drugs as a late, like, teenager. I didn't Didn't really think about it. Didn't really like it. Wasn't my thing, so I didn't drink. I thought football, I've got to keep fit.
And were you the black sheep, or were your brothers dabbling as well? Was it kind of something that ran through the veins?
No, yeah. So there wouldn't be dabbling as in selling and things like that, but it would be, taking like recreational, taking drugs and drinking, and maybe one of my brothers might have bought some for him and his mate off of me. Do you know, like? But it wasn't. I was the one who took it maybe to another level as such. But he's keeping bad company.
How big did it get, your drug dealing?
Well, I was for myself. I was selling wraps, and I was probably at the point of me changing drug jobs. So I was at scaffolding, went back to selling drugs, and I built up to probably selling maybe an ounce, 2 ounces a week with wraps, which is it's £1,000 a week I was getting. And then I got a phone call from someone in the higher drug world to say, do you want to knock that on the head? I didn't drink, didn't smoke. I was a polite person, and I was maybe not under the radar in my town, but I didn't look the stereotypical. Maybe I don't know what their reasons were, but said, "Do you want to come and do bigger drops for loads more money?" I'd have to give the phone away that I had, and then they just said, "Do you want to come and do some bigger drops, money and gear?" Never really asked how much. Just said, "Yeah." Not how much money. I never asked how much I was dropping off, what to do, but I knew these guys driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and not, it's not small time. But when you're in it, you're blinkered, aren't you? You're in a bubble, and you think to yourself. I always joke around, if someone took me under their wing and put me into business or sports or something, I would have naturally progressed through that, because it just was that. Even now, I've still want more, not money wise, but just want more out of life.
And do you think when you was, because it's interesting that you say you got caught up in it because you wanted more than the blue stripes that you were pushing down the supermarket. You wanted more for yourself.
Didn't want to struggle.
Started drug dealing, earning a decent amount of money, it sounds. And this is not an advocate, I'm not advocating people go out there and drug deal.
That lasts minutes.
I'm sure it does. But you were then at a point where you were not struggling anymore?
No. I split up with my children's mum. And when I split up with my children's mum, nothing major happened. We just drifted apart, got together far too young. And the stress of having no money, I think we argued a hell of a lot. And I was single. I had a flat, and I was earning probably, when I took the job on with the other lot who rung me, I was earning thousands of pounds a week.
What did that involve? What did you
dropping money off, picking money up.
So you're talking about like holdalls?
Yeah.
I don't know, plastic bags full of cash?
Yeah, and drugs, the same. Like bags of it. But I never looked at them, like never knew what was in there. It was just dropped there. So I get a phone call. I got given a phone. Got a phone call from a guy, we could say whoever. I don't like. It's funny because I said I could walk down the street and not know who I was actually working for. I knew a guy who rang me up and said, "Frank, can you go and pick this up?" It was always the same place I picked up from. And then just go and deliver it to this place here. Here's a phone number. And then it was like a round as such, where you'd get to know the people you're dropping off to, so you'd ring them yourself. But in the beginning, it was like, introduced to these people, and then it was just like, carry on.
How often would you say you were doing that? Every day?
Yeah.
What sort of quantities of drugs or money do you think
Don't know, bags full. Like heavy bags full. And when I got arrested, I was like, oh my God, what have I been delivering? I knew that they had money, but I knew from before, selling a few wraps, you could earn good money. But I don't know whether insecure is the right word, because I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I was a little bit stupid, really. I didn't think things through.
I'm thinking, was it greed at this point because you were
moving from that world? Yeah, I thought I'm going to naturally progress through this world, and I'm going to be driving a Ferrari.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that. I'm trying to understand that kind of. You went from struggling where you wanted to provide more for yourself and your family a little bit, so you got into the drug dealing, and then you got past that point.
Yeah,
and now was it more about greed and 100%. Wanting more material things that you took more risk, because you were obviously taking bigger risks than just selling a few wraps now.
Yeah, I took more risk, but I was in a world where how can I explain it? I was in a world where it was normal. So I just move up the ladder, and then I move up the ladder, and then I was buying my kids stuff. I remember my kids' mum saying, "Can you, every weekend they go to yours, it's like Christmas. How can I compete with that?" I said, "Well, you haven't got to." We didn't see eye to eye, so it was, there were arguments about things like that. But like looking back now, given the materialistic things, you're ruining two human beings there, really. And being a role model as a drug dealer, how fucking scummy is
Did they
that?
know them?
No, my daughter was 1 when I got arrested, and my son was 5. Didn't have a clue of what I'd done because I didn't live with them, so they just thought, didn't even ask actually if I ever worked. It was, 15 years ago. They just was like, we're going with our dad the weekend, and they don't. Luckily enough, it was a long time. They was too young to see it, and be impressed by it.
How did it change your life, having more money than you did when you were earning?
Well, I didn't do anything extravagant. I just, when you just, it sounds silly, like walk into Tesco's and not have to worry. And I'd go to Lakeside. I'd still shop in Zara and things like that. I wasn't one of these who wore Gucci, Prada, and a t-shirt and jeans. But I just didn't worry, and I had a goal in my head. I'm gonna have a house, and I'm gonna have a Range Rover like that. And I did, at one point I said I was going to retire at 30. I was sitting there thinking, right, I'm going to retire at 30 and try and do something legit with it. But I was hook, line and sinkered into that world, definitely. And I don't know whether it was because, I was going to say if I wanted to or I had to. I think it was more in the end like I wanted to, like you said.
Up until this point, had you had any brushes with the law? I mean, did you have a criminal record? Had you been nicked?
Do you know when you and your lads, you and your mates, we climbed, a window was broken in a local church, we climbed in and got caught, and I got arrested for it. And they said, if we go in there, my mum says this story, I can't really remember it, if we go in and find your fingerprints everywhere. And I said, yeah, you will. But there was boxes of dime bars, and I don't like dime bars, so I didn't nick him. My mum said, I was that honest and that not stupid. She says, we joke around, but she said just everything went over my head, and I was just so honest. And going into the criminal world was definitely wrong for me. If somebody sat me down and said, what are you doing? Stick at this and you'll have a house soon. But I don't know. I think I don't know, being popular at school, maybe trying to carry that on. I've like you say, when you've been in prison a long time, you really think about it. There was a period, only 10 days, of being in prison, staring at the ceiling for 10 days every day, and I've really had a good, hard think.
I get it when you talk about, when you're so ingrained in it, you're oblivious to everything. It's just your world. It's just like a worker's world. Yeah. You're in a bubble.
I was saying I'm going to work, and my mates used to laugh. You're going to fucking work? Are you kidding me? So I'm going to work.
And your work was picking up whatever it is you needed to pick up, money, drugs, and dropping it off.
Yeah.
I hesitate to ask a ballpark figure. What would you earn for doing that kind of job?
I was earning minimum a couple of grand a week, which was a month's money scaffolding.
Where did it go wrong?
When I started selling drugs. So I got a phone call saying, you got a big job coming up, and I've never really told anything like that. Just hang around for a little while. And then, so I was told to go and meet a guy in a silver car, Faden Boys, little town. Went there. It's a massive long thing about, I went into a cafe and I saw this black guy. I found out he's undercover officer. I see him in a cafe. He had an earpiece in. And as I notice things, I'm probably sharper than I give myself credit to. And I've looked this guy up and down, and I'm like, he's a policeman. He's got an earpiece in. He's in outdoor clothes. I've just told to meet a bloke in a silver car by, and I said, mate, there's somebody in that thing, and I think he's watching us in the cafe. And he's gone, no, it's not for us. We're going miles away. So this was, when was this? Like summer, around my dad's birthday, funny enough, because I was sitting there reading the newspaper when he rang just for April, I think, 2009. Was it 2009? Yeah, 2009. I got arrested. Yeah, it was that same year. And I followed this guy in a silver car, and I said to him, there's someone in the cafe, and that's not for us. And we got all the way to Pontefract, done this drop and met these guys. I handed some bags of money over, which I found out it was £328,000. I found out in my case, in the paperwork. And when I turned up, I've been on enough meets to be like, you sort of, hello, how we chatted earlier, how's your son, how's your daughter? And it was that, yeah, fine, see you later. But as you're doing it, you're passing over millions or thousands of pounds worth of drugs. And these guys in this Land Cruiser from up north were like, fucking this, fucking that. And they didn't have nothing nice on. If someone's in that world, have either got a nice watch or a nice pair of jeans or a pair of trainers, nobody gets into the drugs world, like they're getting it to show off, don't they, really? I don't know, but they're getting it. And once they've got loads of money, they'll buy nice clothes or a nice watch. And they carry themselves a bit differently. I don't know. And these blokes just really didn't seem right. And found out later on they were undercover police officers.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
they set up the drug deal.
So on both occasions on this one drop, your instincts was telling you something was wrong.
I was told by somebody not to do it. Because
So not only did you see what you believed was a copper with an earpiece in, and then
that was the
these
same
guys...
day of dropping the money off. So, and I've had this conversations. Like, I worked the other day, I had this conversation with mate at work, and he's like, "You saw what you saw, and you still done it." I said, "You know, if our boss now asks you to work Saturday, you'll work. Imagine that 10 times more scarier. You've got a bag of money, you've got 2 bags of money in your car. You really think you're not going to drop them off? You can't tell these people no." But I put myself there, didn't I? So. Put myself in that situation.
But you didn't think it was, you had an instinct that something was wrong, but you didn't think it was going to be wrong where you get nicked and end up going to prison.
Well, so we'd done the drop at Pontefract, and I was driving back, and then I pulled in a petrol gauge quickly. The guy in the silver cars pulled in behind me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I've just seen I need petrol." I didn't want to break down or anything like that.
The guy in the silver car, he was your colleague who was following you.
He was
do
somebody
the
I
drop.
was told to meet, and he was just got out of the car and he was talking to, I didn't know him. He was just talking to the undercover police officers, but he was obviously sorting a drug deal out supposedly. And I was just called over, got the bags out. And, they said in the paperwork, it's something to do with risk, get me to drop the bags off sort of thing.
Right.
And then coming back, pulled in a petrol station and got out of the car, and the guy from Faden Boys was in the petrol station. The van pulled up next to me. I've got out and I locked eyes with him. He locked eyes with me and my face dropped, and I thought, oh, fuck. And that's when I knew I was getting arrested. I just knew it. You just think, there's no way you see someone in Faden Boys and then see him again the same day. And then I spoke to the guy that I dealt with, and he said, no, you must be imagining it. And I was like, where I second guessed myself, where I haven't been the sharpest at all. I just believed him. I thought, well, I must have.
So did he nick you there and then?
No. So the case went on, and the drugs were picked up, and the police arrested the guy on the motorway, jackknifed him on the motorway, picked up the drugs in the van, which was 299 kilos of cocaine. And then I went on.
What's the street value of that amount?
The street value, they said £80 million street value. Yeah, mad, isn't it? And I went on the run to Thailand. I got the phone call saying the job's gone over, and I was like, what? And they said, the job's gone over. And I was like, I knew it. I said, what do I do now? They said, leave the country. I said, where do I go? And they said, get out of Europe because there'll be a European warrant. And I was like, no way. So I was sitting there thinking, it's funny because I was on the run in England, went down to Cornwall and went down to Newquay thinking I could blend in with the young kids, and the police were stopping people every night because it was a bit of a young place. And I was thinking, what do I do? And I was sitting in a hotel room and the song From the Beach come on. And I was like, I'm going to go to Thailand. So I sneaked over to Ireland and then booked my flight, last opportunity, got on the plane and flew to Thailand. Because I thought I could go and be a beach bum there. I had a couple of £1,000. I think I had, 5, 6, 7,000 pounds, that to my name. Didn't tell my family. I told them I fucked up. They knew what I was doing. I told them I messed up. And I said, I've got to go. They said, what's happened? I said, I can't tell you, but I've got to go. When you're back, I said, I don't know.
When you see these moments, and I'm kind of visualising the movies now where someone finds themselves in a predicament you are in, Frank, and they go on the run and it's all glamorised. Yeah. Is that what it was like for you? Was it like, well, I'm off to Thailand, I'm going to leave my kids behind, I'm going to leave my...
I was probably shaking and an emotional wreck for like 3 days, thinking, what do I do? And then I'm sitting in a hotel, and and it was, you're just waking up and you just got a pressure. You're waking up and you've got a cloud above your head, and then your money's running out. I'm missing my kids, and I was really, really close with my son and daughter, really close. We was inseparable. We didn't live together, but I was every single weekend I saw them in the week. I used to take them out on a Wednesday night. These scummy things. I took my kids out on a Wednesday night after the drugs got picked up. There was a couple of week gap between me dropping the money off and the drugs being picked up. So I knew I'd messed up, and I took the kids out we was at a little place called High Beach, and I was looking at my kids playing, the sun was setting, still imagining it now, and I started like tearing up. My daughter's gone, what's the matter? I said, I've got hay fever. So I knew I've messed up. And so I took the kids back home, and then I got them on the next Wednesday, and the helicopter was following us back from Harlow to Waltham Abbey. And I'm looking, and like, my son's going, yeah, still there, Dad. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is going on here? And talking to people in prison who are like proper criminals, they're like, that helicopter should have fucking overtook you. Whether it was following me or not, I didn't know. But I pulled up at my kid's mum's house. Police have shut the road off. Helicopters hovered above her house. And I thought, oh my God, this is happening in front of my kids. I've ruined my kids' lives. Because I feel like that sort of thing would traumatise them. And they rushing about, and they said, have you, and I said, what's the matter? And I'm walking towards them thinking, I'll get close enough to say, listen, if you're going to arrest me, let me just get in the car. The kids were at the back door, the helicopter's above the house, front door, and the kid's mum looked at me and said, that's for you, innit? I said, yeah, maybe. She's gone, what? And that's the first person I told I've messed up. She's like, what do you mean you've messed up? I said, I've fucked up at work. And like, I might have to piss off. I said, but it's too late now, innit? Walked over there, and they said, oh, and they're shouting it to each other. And then they said, oh, we're looking for someone covered in blood. I was like, what? We're looking for someone covered in blood. And we was like, well, no, we're not seeing him. And they've all drove off. Looked in my paperwork. You know, when you're reading your paperwork years later in your cell and things just hit you like a light bulb. Wednesday night at about 6 o'clock, someone went to go and pick the drugs up and they called it off. And I thought, oh my God, I dropped my kids off on a Wednesday night around 6, 7 o'clock. So whether they was going to arrest me, somebody's called it off, not picked the drugs up. There's no crime.
Oh.
And the police have shot too early with me.
Right.
I don't know, but you know, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm an idiot from Epping. The helicopter wouldn't justify it, but then going to prison, you get cat aid and God knows what else I did.
You ran to Thailand.
Yeah.
How long was you in Thailand?
Just under 3 months. I had enough. One of my friend's houses got raided. Really, really nice bloke. Lived in a really posh road. He sort of, he was an older guy. He rented a car for me, and I gave him the cash, and I didn't tell him what I was doing, and which is scummy, really, isn't it? But he let me live at his house when I got out of prison and everything. He's just really, really nice person. And his house got raided, and I said, I've had enough, I'm coming home. Didn't listen to anyone. I started, stay out there. I said, no, I'm coming home. So I spoke to my kid's mum and said, will you bring the kids up to see me?
I'm slightly confused. So when you ran to Thailand, before you went to Thailand, you borrowed a mate's car. I didn't tell him.
No, he leased a car for me, and I gave him cash when I was getting up to no
And that's the car you used for the drugs drop?
Drugs drops, yeah.
Right, so he then gets raided because they think he's connected.
On the car. Didn't explain it properly.
Right. So he was connected just by you, an association, nothing to do with it.
No, and and then luckily he's an old, forgiving bloke, and he forgave me, and he even says now, Frank, I don't know how you got in that world. I don't know what was you thinking. I'm like, well, you know, you keep them things secret from people that don't. Do you think you ask people advice because you know what they're going to say? You wouldn't ask someone advice to tell you not to do something if you didn't.
No.
Yeah, but
there's no extradition in Thailand. How did they get you?
I handed myself in. Well, not handed myself in. I flew home. I said, I've had enough. I said to my kid's mum, will you bring the kids up to see me in prison? We wasn't together, but she said, of course I will. I said, I'm coming home. And I got arrested on the airplane. I was sitting in my seat listening to English Country Garden. I can remember it. And we landed at Heathrow. It was Heathrow, Gatwick.
Why though? Why did you? You're in Thailand.
I had enough. I hated Thailand. I was missing my family. I didn't speak to my kids because I didn't want to. Imagine the police going around to my mum's house and she'd having to lie to the police where I was and things. I just found them things. It all come down on me when it happened. Maybe the real me come out then of like, what was I fucking doing? And I didn't want my kids' mum's house to get raided next and my children be in bed and they're screaming, booting the door down, because they put the pressure on. You know, being in prison, knowing now, they put the pressure on so you will come home. They knew where I was because I flew on my passport. So I'd just come home before it got any worse and face the music and got arrested, in my seat in the airplane.
They got you off the plane, so they knew you were on your...
The airport police come on. There was 2 plain clothes people behind him, and I didn't think nothing of it. They're pointing at my seat, and I've got my eyes closed. The Australian kid I've been talking the whole way. It's a straight flight going home from Thailand. And I was telling him what to do, and they're coming over, and I'm thinking, oh, this is for me. And even like a glimmer of hope, I think maybe it's not for me. Thinking back now, it is for me. And I've jumped up. They've said, right, you Frank Stedman. They said, you're nicked. And I was like, no shit. And I've jumped up to say like, well, let's get off the plane then. He's fucking get back in your seat. part of my plane started screaming. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Pointing guns at you.
But it was airport police. So I don't know whether it was a real gun or a stun thing, but the gun's in my head. And I'm like, I'm just getting my bag. And then the soccer, found out later, or the serious organised crime agency, she put a hand on his shoulder, dropped it down, and we just walked off. And I shook the soccer bloke's hand that night after about 3-4 o'clock in the morning after all the interviews, because I said to the airport police, I think my children are outside. Is there any other way you can take me out? And he said, no, don't worry. We'll just wrap your coat around your hands. And the soccer bloke took him in a room. He's come out white-faced. And he said, we're going to take you out the side door. So at the end of the night, I know probably people would say, oh, you call yourself a criminal. I don't really care. I just shook his hand and said, thanks for that earlier, because my kids were out waiting for me at the airport with my mum.
What was you charged with in the end?
I was charged with conspiracy to supply Class A and money laundering.
And your
money laundering was left on file.
Oh, right, okay.
It's a drugs thing. I think they do that to see if you're going to try and wiggle out of your confiscation later on.
Right, okay. And you went guilty or?
Pleaded guilty, yeah.
And got
not at first opportunity. My brief said to me, I didn't know what was going on. My barrister said to me, plead guilty later on, Frank, because you lose all your, you lose your, when you're on remand, your clothes and your canteen and things like that. So I just pleaded guilty. I knew I was going to plead guilty from day one.
At the last minute, so you could stay on remand, get visits and all that
visits
kind of
and that, yeah. And that was it, really. That was advice from my barrister.
When you were on remand briefly and the case started to unravel, so you knew you were involved in a little, organised crime game because you were shifting a lot of money and a lot of drugs.
Yeah, when the police officer read out my charges, you're being blah, 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 you've been arrested to supply conspiracy supply Class A, and I went to court the next day. They read out my charges, how much drugs involved. I was gobsmacked. I was like, what the f***? This is like you said earlier, like TV, what the f***? And I remember the court people, he's a Jamaican guy, he's really funny, and I'm in clothes probably similar to this, just come back from Thailand, travelling out of a rucksack, probably look like shit really. And they're like joking around, calling me Pablo, and I'm like, mate, I'm a minute part of what's gone on here.
But this is interesting actually, because all the way through this conversation, you've been considerate, you cared about your family, your kids and everything around you, but these acts of being a drug dealer, being involved, it's quite selfish as well though, isn't it?
I'd say when people say, I sold drugs to make my family better, it's as if you sell drugs to make your family's life better. But at the time, I actually thought money would make my life better. And I've still got a little bit of that now. I scaffold, earn good money, but there's still a part of me now that would love a farmhouse. And, I suppose anybody's like that, but I just wouldn't do anything ridiculous to get it now. But it's a massively, when people say, I was trying to make my family's life better, it's because you get to a point where your children and your family don't need what you're doing. Like, I was earning £2,000 a week. No one needs that much money. As much as nice it is, it's a massive selfish, I was massively selfish through them times and probably enjoyed it a little bit. Jumping queues at nightclubs. It went on for a period of a year, and I could see a future in it for myself, thinking, I'm going to have loads of money one day. Never once thought about how this would affect my children.
And the consequences.
And the consequences, yeah.
And what were the consequences in that court when you pled guilty?
I got 9 years, which I was very lucky, I think. My two co-Ds got 28 years. 2 got off. I think they won an appeal later on because it was an importation, as was just a conspiracy to supply. They said there was a PII? And
PII, public interest.
Yeah, so our case starts like in the middle of a book, a meeting at a hotel. And they're like, what happened before? My barrister said to me, the police have arrested importers and they pretended to be the importers. That's what they think. But I got 9 years. But, everything that happened in prison was my punishment. And the things that happened in prison were horrific, absolutely horrific. My brother took his own life a month into my prison sentence. And I put in to go to his funeral. And then they looked in to go to my funeral, Wormwood Scrubs. Looked into letting me at his funeral, saw what I got arrested for, cat-aid me and put me in the block for 10 days in Wormwood Scrubs. It weren't as bad as when you was in the block, but it was bad. And I was in the block for 10 days and I wasn't allowed to go to my brother's funeral, And,
This is one of your brothers took his own life while you were away.
My brother, month in. So this is, I don't know one to feel sorry for me. If you get involved in crime, this is what happens. You go to prison, one of your loved ones, I said to him, what happens if it was one of my children? They said, you still wouldn't have gone. Wormwood Scrubs looked at to let me go to funeral. They said I slipped the net, put me in the block for 10 days. I was in the block for 10 days, dealing with what's just happened to my brother. And every day I know what they was doing now, but every day they were saying, oh, we're just waiting for the Home Office to get back. They just didn't want me to kick off. The block screw said to me, oh, if you stay here, do you want a job down here? Because, your bedding's dropped at the door. And my bed was made before he's come back round. And I was just, where you're in the block, just stare. And I said earlier, like, I stared at the ceiling and thought to myself, what have I done? I've dragged my family through absolute shit and paid a massive price for it.
And it's even harder, isn't it, if your family are not caught up in the criminal world? I
No.
mean, if they are, they
Raph,
have some
I didn't know anybody who's been arrested. I didn't know anyone who's been in prison. Like when people say, my dad's mate's been in prison, I didn't. Like, it was all glamorised on TV for me. This is my argument with the kids of today. People glamorise this world. It's not real. All that glamour's shit. It's all bollocks.
They talk about the wannabes. What was prison life like for you?
Going back to being at school, I just found my place of being the class clown. I was good at football, so, you sort of find your way. I like him because he's good at football. And I wasn't a liar. I wasn't sneaky. I didn't embarrass myself, I don't think, with taking drugs out of my head and things. I had a drink of hooch one night at my mate's birthday, but I was paralytic and got carried into my cell by a screw and nicked for it. But it was everything that happens outside, you've got to forget about. I accepted it very early on, but I think with what happened to my brother a month in segregation, I said to myself, like, this is your fault, and you need to accept it now, and don't let it. Sort of prison broke me and fixed me in a way. Do you know what I mean? Did
you £80 million drugs conspiracy comes with a bit of a reputation?
Yeah.
Like you said, when you first came, although that tag was on you and you were shocked by the volume of drugs, you were no Pablo Escobar, you were not a drugs. But did you ride that reputation in prison?
Well, I got Cat Aid after, we was on remand, so is it really Cat Aid? Is it Pot A, isn't it? So I got Cat Aid.
Yeah.
And all my codies, realising that it's propaganda, so everyone gets guilty in court. And I got Cat Aid from the segregation. So in segregation for 10 days, I was sent to Belmarsh. And I was half the size I am now. I was probably 11 stone, long blonde hair, like curtains, and, looked as vulnerable as you like. But I didn't see any of my family for months because of the Cat Aid system of your family getting interviewed. My dad and my kids mum got cleared really quickly. And it's funny, my sister and my mum didn't get cleared, and they come up for a Christmas visit and they turned them away and said there's a problem with the paperwork. And last time I saw my mum was on a closed visit 3 days after my brother died. So like these things that you're putting your family through for a bit of fucking money or drug money is stupid. Anyway, what was you saying then about what was prison life for me? With the Cat A, as horrific as it was, I didn't see my family. It helped me day to day because I had a big fucking A on my door. And where you look like me, people left me alone. And what are you Cat A for? And I said, I just got involved in a big drugs case and I dropped a couple of bags of money off. But like you say, I didn't ride it as in going around telling everyone. I wasn't one of them, I'm in for this and in for that. I was in Wormwood Scrubs and then got sent to Belmarsh. Me and my co-Ds were all on that, is it called Beirut? That first wing in Belmarsh, it's horrific. And so everyone sort of knew who you was, and you got that A on your door. Didn't have the book or anything like that. I just had the A on the door. And I wasn't moved. I was kept on a wing, and I was on that wing. And then we got moved to the Woodhill, in the prison within the prison. We call it the unit, but is it called the CSS or something?
Yeah, one of those supervised unit.
That was
Woodhill.
Weird. That was weird.
Yeah.
Went in there, and we was in there for a little while, and I pleaded guilty. Had a couple of hours with I didn't know my co-Ds when we all got arrested. I think what happened is they went out of the circle. Reading the paperwork, it looks like they went out of their normal circle, and it says everyone got arrested. So when I got arrested, I was in a room with people, and I was like, "Who the fuck are you?" I was telling a guy waiting to go on a visit, and a bloke stood up and said, "Oh, I'm your co-D." I was like, "Oh, blimey." So and that has its problems because of if you're arrested with two of your brothers, you can all get your stories straight, and God knows. But I pleaded guilty, and they was like, "Why the fuck have you pleaded guilty?" We was gonna say that it weren't a crime. I said, "Mate, I've been told I'm going to get 18 years if I get caught up in all of this as an organiser. you know, and I joked around with him and said, give my kids £50,000 and I'll plead not guilty. You're not going to do that, are you? And I said, I'm pleading guilty, mate. I'm guilty. There was a video of me, Raf, of carrying a bag, putting the money in there. I've walked off and I've said to the guy, you can't tell that's me. He said, wait. And there was like 4 seconds left. 2 seconds left. I've turned around, paranoid, opened the car door. This is the money drop. Turned around and the police, Oppo in it, they zoomed into my face with the camera. So I was like, there's no way I'm pleading not guilty. I don't care. And anyways, but yeah, that was all like, it was all just prison hours.
But you had to be selfish once again to look after yourself. Yeah. People often say prison, I'm just talking about your time in prison now.
Yeah.
People come and they say, I got in this fight, I did this, I saw this, I witnessed that. Was anything like that?
I had a couple of, not rows, but close calls because I was a bit of a rough footballer. Not rough, I come from a football family and it was centre midfield and my brother told me if you don't tackle hard. So a couple of like young, like gangbangery lads, I broke like two blokes' ankles and they was like threatening to do God knows me and I had to front that the next day. But you know, one thing, a friend had a fight at the servery and I picked the guy, I just got my DCAT. He beat this guy up, which happens all over grabbing food at a servery. You know, it's like, it's so silly. I mean, it come about that he raped an old lady. It's probably why the screw's never done anything. And I just got my DCAT, so I picked him up, wiped his head and put him in his cell and said, stay in here. And then lads like, why are you helping him? I said, I've just got my DCAT. They walk in the servery and there's a bloke landing for it, blood everywhere. I'm not, you know, I'm not going home to see my kids that Christmas. My first home leave was I went to North Sea Camp, which was a terrible place, but they said, if you go there, you'll be home first home leave 3 days before Christmas. I thought, I've got to take it. I don't care where I'm living and who I'm living around. I've got to get out, see my children, like out of prison environment. My kids used to come in on a visit. My mum used to say, oh, he's funny, but sad. They walk in and put their arms out and they lift their souls up. Like your young children shouldn't know things like that, shouldn't experience that. Luckily, my daughter doesn't remember it, but my son does. Did
prison change you?
Yeah, massively.
In what way?
I was happy-go-lucky before it all, and I still am, but I think it's made me paranoid, but then that works in your favour in a way of like you second-guess yourself. It definitely toughened me up, definitely. And the thing with what happened to my brother, I sort of made that decision of, you know, don't let this break you. But it turned me into, I wouldn't say a horrible person. I was never a horrible person, but it just turned me into just like a bit of numb. Like I wasn't a dad, I wasn't a son, I wasn't a brother, I was just a prisoner, and I knew that. So I'd come home from home leaves. I was doing dog walking at one point, just working out in a DCAT, and I had enough. I said, I'm meant to be a prisoner. I said, just put me back into prison until I get released. And I went and worked in the gym in the DCAT, because I just, you know, you're going out every day, walking the dogs, and I was just like thinking, oh my God, I can't imagine you buy a Mars bar and you leave it in your pocket accidentally, you're losing so much risk of losing your home leaves. I just had enough, and I was just like, I just want to get this prison sentence done. But it definitely made me a lot sharper with undesirable people. Like I had to learn very quickly, like in Belmarsh in prison, these two older brothers who were in prison give me a little crash course. And they telling me about prison, you know, people putting it on you and this, that and the other. But I had a couple of them things with myself at football, and then I saw, you know, a guy's got Liam Perrins bottled in the face, twisted it in his face, sitting next to him on the bike in the gym. And like, I spoke to him afterwards, like a couple of days later, and he was all stitched up, and he said, I beat the bloke up in another prison. So, well, you know, what do you expect? He was an older, like, Jamaican bloke, and he was really like quite a level-headed bloke. Yeah, so the things that you probably go through, like you definitely would agree with, someone gets stabbed or beaten up on the yard, you walk around, you're not worried about them on the floor, you're thinking, fuck, we're going to get banged up now. Like you'd step over them and say...
Such an interesting observation. It's so true.
It desensitizes you.
Yeah.
Like I come out, like my mum said when I come out, she said you was just like numb. Not numb, I wasn't a zombie, but like I had no... I don't know, just...
I think that you just hit the nail on the head. You know, you observe someone almost losing their life, and you're worried about not getting association that evening. It's going to fuck up the days eventually you might not get to play football match tomorrow because there's going to be a lockdown for a search and all that. And yet some guy is, some guy's son brother is in hospital. How long did you serve out of your sentence?
4.5 years. Just served half of 9. Yeah.
Right. So you got out.
I've done a lot in a DCAT as well. I behaved. I never got one right up. And I got a DCAT with 30 months in Loudon Grange because I was giving them there. And then I got to the DCAT. You can't go there. Was it 24 months at the time? So I went there bang on the date of. When I got there, they said, "Cool, you've got here early." And I said, "Yeah, I've not."
Did you use the prison wisely? Did you do any courses in there? Did you better yourself educationally or anything?
I tried English educational, but the guy said to me, "Frank, I've never met somebody who does English. 18 months of English and you cannot spell this word that you practice." I found out later in life I was dyslexic, but just through spelling, I've just wrote a book. I've had it rewritten. I've got a book coming out in October, and I've had it. I got a guy, not a ghostwriter, but he was. I wrote it and he rewrote it, and he said to me, "Oh my God, Frank, you've got talent, and you never knew you had it. It's just you've got to work out." Yeah, and so. I tried English, never really worked. But do you know when you're on remand, because I was on remand for like 11 months, they won't let you do courses because you're going to move prisons. And we moved quite a lot on remand. And then I got into a gym-heavy prison, which is Loudon Grange. So I went to the gym. And then when I got to the DCAT, I'd done my personal training qualification. But physically, that's probably how I kept my strength physically. And probably... in the DCAT, I got super, super fit. And anyone who was in that DCAT with me, no one could get anywhere near me with training. And like people used to come and say, "I'll do circuits." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I think, "Oh, fuck, he looks fit." And then before you know it, you're lapping him because of that mental strength, I think, that I gained earlier in my sentence. I do think it definitely helped me and hindered me. Makes you and breaks you, I think. I don't know.
And we ain't got long left, Frank, so I just want to get an idea. Congratulations on writing a book. That sounds like it'd be interesting to read for sure. What's it called?
To Be Frank.
To Be Frank. Love it. Perfect.
Yeah, I've come up with everything. And I've had luggerheads, and it's a long story. I'll tell you off camera, but I've come up with everything in it.
Good.
I've had it hell written.
To Be Frank. Love it. Where has your second chance in life come then? Did it come when you started to deal drugs and the whole of your trajectory of life changed, or did it come when you were released from prison, or hasn't it come yet? Where's your second chance?
I think my second chance came when I got arrested. It showed me who I really was. I didn't have to be this big, like gangster I am bloke. And it taught me to be who you are, and who you are is enough for the people that matter. So, I think my second chance was that, and I had a heart attack the other year, and that's given me a kick up the arse from an infection.
Heart attack?
Yeah, I had an infection through, and my heart swelled up and bang, and I had a bit of a funny turn at work, and I was in hospital. I was off work for 16 months, and that pushed me into doing this. I spoke to a friend who was a prison officer, and he said, "Frank, go and tell." I underestimated the power of conversation until I started doing these. I've had messages all over the world saying thanks. My son was out the other week and a bloke said, "I watched your dad's podcast and I've stopped selling drugs. I've done my job."
Absolutely. And what is the moral of your story, Frank, do you think?
Crime doesn't pay. And if you get involved in crime, it is not Range Rovers and Rolex watches. It's a death in your family and you're not there to support them, and you having no support when the chips are down. And also, it's a selfish, temporary life. Anyone who's involved in crime and drugs or whatever, that lasts a minute part of their life, and it still affects me to today. I had a heart attack and I applied for jobs because I couldn't go back to scaffolding, and I didn't get a job. And I wouldn't, Raf. If someone come to me and same qualifications, one's got criminal record, one hasn't, I've been to prison, I still wouldn't hire the criminal record person. You wouldn't, would you? Until you met them, obviously. You wouldn't call them in. I just think that getting involved in crime, it just has no future, and you're just going to hurt everyone and yourself. You're going to ruin yourself. I nearly ruined myself, didn't I? Going to prison, being in segregation, I'm lucky, touch wood, maybe my mum's strength from a child, something in me got me out of prison in one sort of frame of mind as such.
And all the bridges that were burnt when you were being arrested, going to prison, and the things you put your family through, have they been rebuilt?
Yeah, my family, it was never burned. They was always there. Luckily, I'm lucky because people aren't that lucky. You know, it happened. My family's like, right, what do we do now? And then when that happened with my brother, they was like, oh shit. Like, so you know, I've had nothing but support from my family and friends. Maybe there is people that I've not noticed, maybe drifted away, but I haven't really noticed that. But I'm one of 6. You know, a family barbecue for us is 32 people with grandkids. So we, you know, your friends are your brothers and sisters, sort of thing.
And what does tomorrow hold? You're a scaffolder at the moment. You've written a book. What does tomorrow hold?
I've wrote a book, Scaffold. I've done a couple of a couple of these which have gone really well. I've done a program which come out on Channel 4, which looks really, really promising and good for, you know, and hopefully somebody sees my story. And I just want to, do you know, I'd like to go down in history as someone who's helped somebody in the end. And I didn't realise that my story could help other people.
And that's the perfect thing, though, because I think when you do, you start to go on that path where you're determined to change people's lives, where I think just hearing what you have to say, listening to where your life changed, how it changed, why it changed, and how you talk about it is enough to help people without knowing you're really doing it.
Like you can, you know, I got arrested for that amount of drugs. You know, the people that put me in the newspaper locally also put my brother's death in the newspaper. Like, you know, these things. I've had ITV interview me, ITV News interview me to say the same thing as you, like your stories. I underestimate it. To me, it's just, oh, it's my boring story, and the kids are like, shut up, sort of thing. But I just want to be true to myself and help people, really.
I think that's what you're doing. Frank, thanks so much for coming in and talking to me. It's a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching or listening to the Second Chance podcast, where we share stories of redemption, hope, resilience, and second chances. Who deserves a second chance? Who has the right to give someone a second chance? And is a second chance even deserved? That's what Second Chance is all about. So subscribe if you want to be kept up to date with new episodes.